Hello everybody, Carol Garrison with Carol's Creative Escape. It's time for another Make It Monday. And tonight it is August 7th, 2023. And I am feeling in the mood for some beach time, so I'm sharing a card that I created using the Seaside Bay stamp set. I thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to watch this video, whether you're watching it live or on replay. I appreciate it either way. I have been stamping and making cards for probably between close to 30 years now, and about 10 years of that has been working strictly with Stampin Up products as a Stampin Up demonstrator. And again, I just appreciate you being here with me tonight to watch this video. My goal with my cards and my videos is to simply spread joy one card at a time, whether that's sending a card out that I create to somebody or showing somebody how to make a card and let them see or find that creative piece inside of them again. So I am going to get started. I hope everybody had a great week. We had kind of a busy week last week, and our weekend was fairly busy as well. Celebrated a big wedding anniversary, so that was nice to be able to go out to eat for that. And oh, the other big thing that happened at my house is my workspace down here. Not so much my workspace, but I share space with our family room. Our daughter has been storing lots and lots of stuff here for her new classroom. She's switching school districts, and she was able to get into her new classroom, so she moved out all of her stuff. And I am pretty certain that my space down here has almost doubled in size because of that being gone. So my goal is to finish painting that part of the room and then not have it get cluttered up with boxes again. We'll see how long it lasts, but right now I'm loving the empty space. So without further ado, let me flip my camera over and we'll go ahead and get started on this fun blending brush card using the Seaside Bay stamp set. Just a moment, please. I apologize in advance for any jiggling here. Whoops, well, that didn't go so well. All right, there we go. And I'm gonna just make sure I am live on the right page, because yes, I am. Good. That's always exciting when that works out well. Okay, and I'm going to one more set of jiggling, and then hopefully I can get my camera straightened out here. Kind of feel like I'm down just a little bit low, but really crooked. Yikes. Last few weeks I've been doing pretty well getting things lined up, and tonight I am struggling with it. So it's kind of funny, as I was working on this card using the Seaside Bay stamp set, Otis Redding's song Sitting by the Dock of the Bay was playing, so I think this card was just meant to be tonight. Like I said, I'm using the stamp set Seaside Bay. This is in the annual catalog, and if you notice down here, there's a little kind of gold logo, and it just says $1 Million Seller. This set was created by Susan Morton, who is a $1 Million seller. When you hit that level of sales with Stampin' Up, they let you come in and help create a stamp set that reflects you or something important in your life. And this was the set that she created. And honestly, when I first saw this, what really attracted me is this bird right here. For some reason, he just struck me as being super cute. So today's card is actually going to feature this bird along with these little baby birds. And I'm going to do some brushing techniques just to kind of remind you that there's other ways you can make your cards. So this involves a little bit of stamping. This particular stamp set does have coordinating dies. I'm just going to kind of flip through and show you a couple things real quick here. So this is the stamp set. It's on page 101. And like I said, it was designed by Susan Morton. And it's considered a distinctive stamp, which means that there's going to be darker and lighter areas created in the stamps simply by how those stamps were created. So it gives a little contour to your images. And then, like I said, this set does have dies. I am going to tell you that I loaned mine out and I thought I had them back, and it turns out I didn't yet. So I did end up fussy cutting a couple of the birds, well, all of the birds out. Not a big deal. It wasn't very hard to do, but I did end up doing that. And if I'd had my dies, I think I probably would have cut some grass out. So I think this time I may stamp those on, and we'll just see what happens with that. And then I am using sentiments from this stamp set as well. One of them I did Heartfelt Sympathy, and the other one, my sample card actually is using the Happy Retirement stamp from the Gone Fishing stamp set. And then for embellishments, I am using these flat adhesive back pearls just because I think they're really cool and added a little bit of pop to this card. And then finally, last but not least, I brought in and used these deckled rectangles. They are just create a rectangle die with kind of those torn edges. And I really liked the look here, and so I wanted to bring these in. And I think that is it for the main supplies that I use. So let me get you started on this card. This is what our card is going to look like. And it's just a single layer card. Like I said, there's my deckled rectangle. And I did some sponge blending brush, rather, not painting. And created some color or detail on these birds just by adding a little bit of water using a water painter. And then created the water scene, the beach or sand, and then the sky scene just simply using my blending brushes. Not sure if you can see, but on this darker color that represents the water, I went ahead and put a little wink of Stella on there so it would catch some of the sparkle when the sun hit the waves out in the ocean. And I liked, I didn't necessarily try to do this, but I kind of liked how the sponging turned out. So it kind of looks like maybe a little bit of cloudiness in the sky as well. A little bit of stormy cloud. So that is the card we're going to make. Let me go ahead and get started here. Supplies, pretty basic here. You need a 5.5 by 8.5 piece of, in this case, I'm using Tahitian Tide. Tahitian Tide. It's 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. I have 2 pieces of basic white because on the inside of my card, I went ahead and carried that deckled edge theme through to the inside of the card as well. I just thought that'd be a little bit different. So I've got 2 pieces. Basically, I needed a 4 by 5.5, 4 1/4 by 5.5 square. That gives you some wiggle room here. And I'll be right back here just a second. To make sure the dog wasn't getting into the kitten food. And then I just needed some basic white scraps so that I could stamp my birds. Hi Lynn, thanks for joining us. Stamp the birds. And then I am using some of the masking tape so that I can create the rough edges right here where the sand meets the water. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to take and set everything aside except for this piece that I'm working on. I've got lots of blending brushes, and I have got my scratch paper for doing my blending on. And the first thing that I'm going to do is just tear. I'm hoping this is going to work. I'm not sure if it's going to. Oh, you know what? That's not my masking tape. That's adhesive paper. No worries. Here's my... No, I don't want the adhesive sheets. I want the masking paper. There. Whew. That could have been a disaster. So we're going to add our masking sheet, and they're nice because they already come the width of the card. And all I'm going to do is just sit and tear this edge of the paper. I want it to kind of be rough. It isn't gonna really match what I just did, and it doesn't need to. In fact, I'd rather that it not, because then each card is unique. And I am going to actually save this piece of paper because it's going to help me block where I put my sand when I work on the water part, or it'll help me block the sky where I put my sand down, and that way I don't run into issues with that. And then I am just going to grab my scissors real quick and cut right along that seam. When I made my first card, I kind of forgot about this, which is why I had the wrong thing grabbed out. And I did go back and want to use it because my originally I used kind of a post-it note, and it wasn't staying stuck down, so at times it kind of flipped up. And so for me, I wanted to make sure that didn't happen again. So that's why I'm using this. And I've just slid my card off because I want to see where this is going to hit with the sand. And I was having problems doing that on the white paper. So I'm just going to adhere that down here. Now I just did the cardinal rule no when I'm using this tape. And what I'm referring to is this is really sticky, and it does have a tendency sometimes to actually tear your cardstock. And the quickest way to eliminate that is to simply attach it to whatever you're wearing a couple times and let it pick up some of the fuzz or lint. And that just makes it a little bit less sticky, so that when you go to remove it, you don't have to worry about tearing your cardstock. I do it probably 3 to 4 times. Kind of depends on what I'm wearing, how much cat hair I might be wearing. And that should take care of it. Now I can put it back on. And like I said, that's just going to keep it from sticking too much to your cardstock. So you don't have to worry about that getting torn. That was one of the tips that kind of came out after people were having problems with that. All right, so there I've got my beach scene. Now I'm going to bring it back up onto my scratch paper here, and I am going to start by creating my water. I actually am using Balmy Blue, which is a lighter blue, and then the Tahitian Tide. And I'm going to start with the Balmy Blue and cover all of it with the Balmy Blue. And so to do this, I'm just rubbing it on my ink pad. Now, depending on how freshly re-inked your ink pads are, you may have to do this more or less than what you're seeing me do here. I want to make sure, yeah. And I'm just going to start, I always start by rubbing it off on my paper and then bringing it on. That avoids getting some of those really dark splotches that you can sometimes get. And I'm just moving it in a circular motion, and I don't want it to be perfect and cover everything, at least not super heavy, because I do kind of want that look of clouds in the sky. So we're going to just kind of go over, keep going over it till you have it about how you want it to be, and I'm happy with that. So I'll set that blending brush aside. And now I'm going to grab my Tahitian Tide because I'm using that to create where the water actually is going to be. I want it to be darker than the sky so that you can see that. And I'm using one of the mini blending brushes primarily because I want to limit how much space I cover. And this just gives me less that I have to worry about going quite as big as I did with that first brush. It's going to let me cover a smaller space. And again, I'm taking it off and bringing it onto the side, and I'm going to stick pretty much right into where I've got my masking paper. Now, when this stamp set first came out, there was some really cool 6x6 designer series paper that came out at the same time, and it allowed you to create some pretty cool beach type scenes without maybe doing all of these steps. But that paper isn't available anymore, so I want to make sure that I'm showing you how you can create your own water scenes just by using the blending brushes. And again, I'm not going straight across. If I create a few waves, that's a-okay with me because it might be a windy day out there. So I'm not having it be a perfectly straight line on that piece. And then I am going to take my Daffodil Delight. Now I could have blocked out the sun too, but I kind of wanted it to be hazy. And so I am just doing it right over where I have my blue. Again, making sure I have most of it off and just going in a circular motion to create the sunshine. And I'm happy with that. It's kind of filtered, but it is coming through. I think with all the fires that have been burning in the US and Canada, we're getting used to this filtered sun, so it seems sort of fitting. And then before we get too far, and before I start attaching my birds, I want to go ahead and add Wink of Stella just to the water because I want it to be picking up some of the sparkle from the sunshine. And so I am just adding it to where I put that darker water. I'm not being very consistent with it. I'm just spreading it around. And that way in the ripples in the water, the sun can catch that. And we'll be done with that. And now I can peel this off, and so you can see I've got just this really nice, except right in that corner, straight line. And what I can do now is peel the backing off of that piece that I tore off. And if all goes as planned, this piece is going to match right in here. And I am going to leave just a little bit of the turquoise showing because I want, I don't want any white spaces in there. So we're just going to add that in there. And now I'm going to follow up. And with this one, you really want to make sure you're not getting too heavy with your brush. So I'm just going to add some here, and I'm going to take off a chunk of it. I want this to be light. My first card, I kind of think it maybe got a little bit dark. Part of that was because I forgot to brush it onto my paper first, and I ended up with a dark blob, but that happens. And so I am kind of going right up to the edge. I'm okay if the sand gets into the water a little bit, because in real life, that's what happens. We don't have a clear line of sand and beach. The water tends to run over the beach, so we want to try to create that as we're working through here too. All right, so there's my sand scene. And then real quick before I do any more assembly, I'm going to open up Pebbled Path, and I am going to stamp some of the grains of sand to add a little detail to my beach scene. And I did stamp off because this is a darker color, and so I didn't want to go full intensity, so I'm doing the second generation stamping here, and I'm just randomly placing bits of sand. You can turn it around. Be sure to do that. You can get some different detail doing that, different look. And my goal isn't to cover this in its entirety, but to add until I think it looks right. And you get to decide what looks right for you, and I get to decide what looks right for my card. So that takes care of that. And now we're done. I do have some white spots showing there, so I am going to come back in with my brown brush and hopefully be able to fill in just a little bit along the water. I was hoping I wouldn't have quite that much showing, but I do. So we're going to come up with another way to fix that, and that's to get our water painter, which we're going to be using in just a minute here anyhow. And I am just going to come in and brush that. That way I can have a little more control over filling up. There's always a way to correct it. This just gives me a little bit more control than using the blending brush was giving me. It's such a little amount that is showing. And it is a little lighter, so that is now going to become sea foam. You know how you get some of the foam from waves? That's what we just created here. Okay, then, you know, when you're filming live, you just have to kind of go with the flow and figure out how to solve problems, and that's exactly what we need to do when we're stamping too. Some things I can cover up with bling, some things I can't, and then we just got to figure out how to fix that. So the next piece that I'm going to do is stamp the sentiment, because I want this to dry. And on this particular one, I'm going to turn it into a sympathy card. There's something about these birds in the beach that for me, I find calming. And so I'm hoping that maybe if somebody's going through a hard time because of a death in their family, that they may find the ocean and these cute little birds soothing for them as well. And I'm going to go ahead and do this in the Tahitian Tide color. And we're going to stamp that just right onto our card. Let's hope it's straight. Close enough. And then we can set that aside for just a minute so it can dry. And I'm going to grab the inside of my card and I'm going to stamp that with the seashell and beach image. So we're just going to put that here. On this one, I got it going down a little bit lower than I did on my other one, and I have room for 3. So I'm just creating a border, stamping right off the edge of that deckled edge there. And it works. Okay, so I'm going to set that ink pad up there so I don't use it. Put that aside so it can dry. And the last thing I need to work with are these little birds. Now, I wanted to add just a bit of shading to their bellies and kind of blend in the rest of the ink. So I'm doing that with my aqua painter and my pebbled path. I've just pressed down on the lid a little bit to get some fresh ink. I'm going to get the cat hair out of my ink tray. Or at least off to the side so I don't have to worry about it. And with these, I'm just squeezing to get a little bit of water to fall into the tray. And I want to pick up just a little bit of color and a little bit of that water. And I'm going to run it starting on the bellies of the birds. Now, one thing that's going to happen is this ink is going to run just a little bit because I'm adding water to it. And that's okay because that's kind of the look that I personally wanted. And the belly's not getting dark enough, so now I can go back in and just pick up a little bit more color going into the darker shade on my water and brush that in. Try not to get a whole lot of water onto the paper because this is just your basic white cardstock that I'm working with and not watercolor paper. But if you just go light, it'll dry and you shouldn't have any problems with it. And again, we'll kind of just color in on the body of the bird. And I'm doing this just because I felt like they needed a little bit more color. You don't even have to color them if you didn't want to do that. And that's all I need to do. And again, I did fussy cut these birds out. If I use my dies, my edges would be a little, that unintentional. I was trying to do laundry tonight too and lost track. Okay. So the other thing that I mentioned I might try doing on this one is adding a little grass. Now I don't have my dies, so I'm not able to cut grass, but let me see if I've got something in my collection here that will work for us. I do. Oh, actually, I am going to use my oceanfront stamp set, and that's going to allow me just to get some little grass and some seagrass just to add a little bit more to the back of the card. I'm going to grab some old olive ink in the process here. Okay, I think that kind of gives me just a little bit more balance to what I was looking for. I do also have this little stamp that's got some short grass. I think I'm going to add just a couple sprigs of that as well. And I am stamping this off actually twice to get it just very faint little spots of grass. I don't want the grass to be the complete focal point. And then, last but not least, we're going to start to assemble our card. So, let's bring our birds out. We'll get rid of that distracting dark piece of paper. We're going to grab our card base. We will fold it in half and take our right in front of me. Grab the bone folder and we'll just burnish it. And then I am going to take and add this to the inside of the card. And remember, light pressure, kind of a little check mark. And we'll just put this on the inside of the card. They're not exactly the same dimensions to scale it down exactly and have even borders on all four sides. So I'm just trying to make sure it's even top, bottom, and left, right. And that's just the inside of the card. I really like those shells on the bottom. And then here, we're going to add this to the front of the card. And again, with our seal, it's very strong, so you don't have to be heavy with using it. I like to just do two edges and kind of drag it diagonally across the middle. I found that that is more than sufficient. And then we're going to add our little birds here using dimensionals. I wanted to pop them up just a little bit. My kittens got into my dimensionals. If you've been following me, you know I've got two. They're about somewhere between 3 and 4 months old right now. And they got into my dimensionals. So not only do I have the wax backing that I always have from me using my dimensionals, but I am finding some dimensionals that they pulled off the backing and have it sticking in my carpet in different places. It's a good thing they're cute. I'd forgotten just how mischievous little kittens are. It's been a long time since I'd had young kittens. So we're going to put this bird, I think, right here, kind of coming off that grass. And this card, I'm going to have one bird walking behind and two birds walking in front instead of the opposite like I did on my first card. And that's got more to do with adding that grass and how I think I need to balance things out a little bit. And that's a cool thing about making cards. Even if you do the same layout, you can create a unique card each time. And that's one of the things I really like. There's just never going to be two cards that will be exactly the same. Okay, and so now we've got our little birds on there, heartfelt sympathy. And last but not least, we're going to add some of these flat adhesive pearls just to have some rocks out there. And I am just randomly grabbing these up with my Take Your Pick tool and placing them on our beach scene. And whoops, a little bit of the green stuff came off. And there is our card for tonight. Again, it looks fancy, but really it doesn't take very long. The longest part was the fussy cutting. I do find when I'm working with sponges and creating these kind of scenes, I have to not focus on trying to make them perfect or the colors in just the right spot. I think sometimes you can get over involved trying to get that kind of perfection. And so I do tend to step back just a little bit when I'm working on stuff like that and not worry that it's exactly lined up. So there's your cute little quick scenery card. I'm going to try to figure out how I can add some grass to this because I do like that. And we are done for tonight. So we will see everybody next week. We actually have a new mini catalog that'll be coming out at the end of August. And I recently participated in a live unboxing party with Susan Campfield on my upline. And I got to show off one of the new Christmas sets that's in that mini catalog. I typically try not to share too much of that catalog until after you guys can access that information too. But I really like the set that I bought, and so I'm going to share it with you and then create a non-Christmassy card with a Christmas stamp set. So we will see everybody next week. Have a great week and take care. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.